Okay, so this is the preview of the 2018-2019 time jump for FANWAR, and I'm going to go over what's predicted to happen, and then you can take your actions as you see fit. Now, as you know, this particular season we've decided to set our baseline for the events that happen over the time jump to neutral. Usually I set them to more of like a dark version, which means if your characters don't take actions, politically, then it's assumed that they're doing nothing of importance, and so things look very, very dark. We decided to do a version where it's assumed that all of your characters are doing their best to help out in all the ways they usually do, and so it's set at a more neutral tone, and that means that political actions you take are somewhat less effective, but you've already been factored into a lot of things. So I'm going to go through what's predicted to happen and kind of go over areas you might want to work on, or places that seem like they are of importance, and some of the basic key things, and then we'll go through this month with the time jump and see where things go from there. So the basics are, it was 19 years that go by, which is a pretty standard amount for a time jump like this. Some pretty interesting and cool things happening, actually. One of the most exciting things is that the royalty of Rokron and all of the political organizations are really look like they're organizing. There's a chance here for a new kind of government system to emerge, and there's been some rumblings of this happening in the plot line, but I wasn't sure if it was going to manifest. It does look like a new leadership in Rokron is emerging, and possibly a new even system of leadership, meaning something a little more along the lines of something with like a council, or something even totally new design. That's really interesting. So that's going to be something we'll be doing some encounters about, and you can put a lot of political points into getting that new kind of government running, because this is emerging out of the need to defend ourselves against the Wizard Trade Order and other elements, which you'll see. So Desnor's clans are doing pretty good. The Free Republics is doing all right, but not fantastic. It looks like something new is kind of emerging. In terms of the overall like major regions and how each of them is doing, Svodlin is doing looks like they're doing pretty well and politically gaining a lot of strength. It looks like what people are discovering is that Svodlin has made an alliance with the Wizard Trade Order, and they're both using slaves, although in different ways. Svodlin is using undead slaves, and then the Wizard Trade Order is using living slaves, and between the two of them, they're like two pieces kind of crushing Rokron, and the idea being that they're going to be the saviors, sort of to save Rokron from itself, which is obviously falling apart in their view. Many people are pushing against that. This is also what causes the new government to kind of emerge. So if you don't like that idea, then you need to push back against that with your political points. Dagdav looks like they're doing really well initially, although things get kind of worse for them towards the end, which is good for the characters. There's more on that later. Ilyanos is in a really rough spot. They're all still broken up into the cracks on the plateau. That's expected. Odalathan seems to be doing fairly well. Geb, Andy and Ion, Stonehammer as well. Hostor is doing decent. Nothing really horrific there. Amir takes a turn. Things get much worse for Amir, and Ryrie also really bad. Ryrie's getting invaded by Dagdath, and that doesn't look good. So we'll probably lose a Ryrie unless people do some things about it. Blackspire, pretty good overall, and some changes that I'll get into there around orcs that are important, that are looking like they're filling up, but we'll see how they go. Ian Ion is recovering, but needs a lot of help if they're going to come out of this sort of dark situation they're in right now with the zombie surge. Astengrad has an interesting term, which some people knew kind of was happening. They kind of start to come apart as the glue that holds all the other sorcery from coming apart. They sort of they're losing their role as the trusted group, and many people are deciding to focus on doing this themselves, and so you're starting to see this rebellion kind of coming out of Astengrad, of mages coming out of Astengrad saying, we don't want to be part of your group anymore. You don't do anything to keep us all alive, and you're too isolationist. Temnor doing really good actually. Temnor really picks up some steam, and I think they're going to be a major player in the next time jump. If you don't, I mean not next time, but in the next season. Which if you don't like that idea, then you may need to push back against that. But they're really doing great, and they don't like there was a trade order, so that's good. But they also tend not to like a lot of other people, so we'll have to see where that goes. Desnor, as they're trying to create this new government, they are running into some major economic problems. They cannot sustain the war that they've been trying to keep going, and so unless they get major influxes of support, Desnor is going to have a real big problem and may not be the main seat of governance anymore because they can't sustain it. So that's something to look into. Sorconia manages all right. All the work people did there really made a difference in keeping that Sorconia staying independent, but they could still use some more support there. In terms of the people trying to sail into the West and get into the West, there is a slight chance that works out, but definitely people will need to put some energy into it if it's gonna go over the top. It looks like it's not a for sure. So something to look into there. Okay, let's get into organizations now, and look a little closer, zooming in a little bit here. So, the Silver Service, which is one of the main organizations that protects Rorocron and has for a long time, they protect the royalty, just gets wrecked at this time jump. So if you like having the Silver Service around, you need to do something about that because they're getting really kicked in the teeth. Pinnacle is doing okay. The Wizard Trade Order is doing pretty well also, although they do have a major setback in their power level. That it seems like a lot of groups are attacking them on the magic front, and that is drastically reducing their major advantage with magic. This might have something to do with groups to the south, but a lot of people suggest that it has to do a lot with what's going on right here around in Rorocron. Other groups you need to know about. Stormwatcher Tower, it seems, has had a major problem with the information that they maybe stole about the zombie surge and the zombie plague. That's really bad news, because if this problem does go through, if people don't keep this from becoming if they don't keep this from exploding, this means that a lot of groups may have all the information on the zombie surge, which means that we have a much bigger problem than just the zombie apocalypse we have currently. Other things, Blackspire has done fairly well, although they have a really hard time recovering from the zombie surge economically. So of course they're kind of their ad has dropped really significantly. If you don't like that, you should put some points there. The Dark Wilds has some interesting developments. Mostly it's the usual, but there's some stuff I'll get to at the end, which is very significant. Let's see. Okay, moving on to a little bit closer in. There's a major